Okay, so, we'd love to explore these kind of unusual sources here on the deep dive. And you sent us some audio that is uh, definitely in that category.
Oh, yeah, definitely unique.
Yeah, so we are going to kind of unpack some of these. I guess we can call them claims. I don't know if theories is the right word, but um, some of the ideas presented in this audio about, uh, I don't know, unseen forces influencing our world and maybe even our inner selves, right? Like it gets pretty deep.
It does.
Yeah,
Well,
and what's so interesting is the perspective that it's coming from, right?
right.
It's not like your typical kind of spiritual or philosophical, um, source material,
Definitely not the usual stuff.
right? And we want to do this, without revealing the source itself, but really help you understand, okay, what are the central arguments here?
Mhm.
What's the reasoning behind them, and what are some of the key takeaways for you, the listener?
Right.
So, should we just jump
Wake
in?
up. Let's dive in.
Okay, so one of the first things that really jumped out at me in this audio was the description of what they're calling a mothership.
Oh, yeah, the mothership.
It's this, massive structure, and they use this analogy of a spinning top, or a PO, I think is the word they use.
Yeah, PO,
To
exactly.
kind of give you a sense of the shape.
It's trying to give you a visual, right? Something that we can kind of grasp onto.
Yeah, and then they talk about like exiting this ship right from the widest part, like the hangar, and entering this field that they describe as static.
Hmm. Interesting.
Now, this isn't like, static electricity static. It's I don't know how to even explain it, but it's supposed to allow those outside the vessel
Hmm.
to breathe.
Hmm.
So it's maintaining some kind of internal atmosphere.
Almost like a contained environment, right?
Yeah, and what's fascinating is they emphasize how like dynamic this static field is. As the mothership moves, it's constantly restructuring itself, adjusting,
Hmm.
so that it can maintain that breathable environment.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty wild
I
concept.
know, it's like mind-blowing. It's like this huge object moving through space with its own little bubble of air around it.
To trip?
So they move from this hangar area to an upper level, and they talk about what they call a 360-degree consciousness room.
Yeah, the consciousness room.
Tell me about this, because this is where things start to get really trippy.
Okay, so imagine a room where all the Earth's, what they call nominal consciousnesses, are represented as pixels.
Nominal consciousnesses.
Yeah, I think they're talking about like the essence, the spirit of each individual.
Okay, so each person's like a pixel on this big screen.
Right, and the appearance of each pixel, it corresponds to the level of consciousness expansion.
Consciousness expansion meaning.
So the brighter the pixel, the more expanded the consciousness.
Oh, I see.
And the darker the pixel, the more it's kind of obscured or weighed down by things like fear, hate, the need for power, all that stuff.
Okay, so like a spectra of light and darkness.
Exactly.
So where does humanity fall on this spectrum? Where are our pixels?
Well, they say humanity is currently in this kind of shaded area. It ranges from like the deepest black to different shades of gray.
Hmm. So not like super bright, but not completely dark either.
Right, somewhere in between.
And then they mention these other colors too. Blue, green, yellow. What are those?
Those represent what they call spirits of light, non-incarnated beings.
So not people on Earth, but like...
Other entities, I guess, existing outside of physical bodies.
Okay, so this room, it's like a snapshot of all these different consciousnesses all connected in some way.
Yeah, it paints a pretty big picture.
And then they start talking about percentages, right? Like how many pixels are bright, how many are dark? How's that changing?
Yeah, so initially they give us some figures. They say about 22% of the consciousness pixels are those brighter ones, and then about 20% are in the darker range.
So a big chunk is in that middle ground, that gray area.
Right, the majority is somewhere in the middle.
But they're saying it's shifting, right?
Yes. The more recent figures they give are pretty interesting. They say the brighter pixels have increased to 26%, while the darker ones have decreased to 16%.
So it's moving in a positive direction.
That's what they're claiming.
They also make this claim about the way good and evil are evolving.
Yeah, how they're growing or shrinking.
And explain that.
So they're saying good is growing geometrically. It's increasing at an accelerating rate. It's like doubling with each step.
Okay.
Whereas they say evil is decreasing arithmetically, so it's more of a steady step-by-step decline.
Interesting. And why is that important?
Well, they're using that to explain why we might not always see this positive shift happening around us, because geometric growth, it just compounds so much faster than arithmetic growth.
Okay, so even though good is expanding rapidly, evil is still decreasing, but at a slower pace.
Exactly.
Which brings us to their arguments about the media.
Oh, here we go.
They have some strong opinions about how the media portrays the world.
Right. They're saying the media is completely skewed towards the negative.
Give me an example.
Well, they claim that the media focuses way too much on negative events and stories, and it's all to keep humanity in a state of what they call enslavement.
Enslavement.
Yeah, like mentally and emotionally enslaved.
Making us think.
That we're flawed, that we're always on the verge of some catastrophe,
And that keeps us from,
reaching our full potential, recognizing the good that's actually happening.
that's a pretty big accusation.
It is, and they contrast this with the idea that good is inherently silent.
Silent meaning.
It doesn't seek attention, it's not flashy or dramatic, like all the negative stuff that makes headlines.
So it's easy to miss.
Exactly, gets overshadowed by all the noise.
Okay, now they also talk about these entities that are working to spread despair.
Yeah, who are these guys?
They call them the Asklers. And they say their whole purpose is to make humanity feel hopeless.
Like they're intentionally trying to bum us out.
Yeah, and they do it by suggesting things like, we've been abandoned by some higher power, or that some huge disaster is about to wipe us all out like an asteroid impact or something.
Yikes, that's cheerful.
And the reason they're doing this
Yeah.
is to stop consciousness expansion.
So it's all connected back to that?
Yeah, they describe it as a game, right?
Yeah.
Fear paralyzes us.
Yeah.
It keeps us from growing individually and collectively.
If we're terrified all the time, we're not going to focus on self-improvement or making the world a better place.
Right, we're just trying to survive. So they've painted this pretty bleak picture of these, unseen forces manipulating us, keeping us in the dark.
It's intense.
But then they talk about light. What do they say about that?
So light is the opposite of all that fear-mongering, right? It's about encouraging open dialogue and considering different perspectives.
So instead of making us afraid,
Light wants us to talk to each other, to exchange ideas, to understand each other.
okay, that makes sense.
Yep.
And they also address why some people might be more easily deceived than others.
Right. Why do some people fall for this stuff?
So what do they say?
Well, fear is a big factor. Obviously, if you're already living in fear, you're more vulnerable to manipulation.
Right, you're looking for answers. You're looking for someone to tell you what to do.
Exactly. And then they talk about a lack of direction or purpose in life that can make people susceptible as well.
So if you don't know where you're going, you're more likely to get lost.
Yeah. And also wanting quick fixes, magical solutions,
Like what?
like miracle cures or instant wealth. They say that kind of thinking makes people easy targets.
Because they're desperate for something to make things better.
Right. And they're willing to believe anything that promises them that.
And what about the people spreading these ideas? What do they say about them?
They warn us about charismatic individuals who might have some genuine insights, but they also mix in misinformation.
So just because someone's a good speaker doesn't mean they're telling the truth.
Exactly. And that can be really dangerous because they can convince people of things that aren't true, even if they have some good points mixed in.
So we have to be careful who we listen to.
Absolutely. And they specifically talk about the danger of losing hope.
Hope.
Yeah, they say hope is essential for consciousness expansion.
Why is that?
Because without hope, you can't envision a better future. You don't believe in your own ability to grow and change.
So it's like hope is the fuel that keeps us moving forward.
Exactly. And without it, we're stuck.
Then they get into this critique of catastrophism.
Mm.
What's that all about?
They're basically saying that the people who are constantly predicting the end of the world are doing more harm than good because they're focusing on negativity and fear, which distracts from the potential for positive change and individual growth.
So it's like they're creating a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Maybe they're saying we need to focus on the good, the potential for growth, not just dwell on the bad.
And they also talk about false promises, right? Those quick fixes we were talking about earlier.
Oh yeah, the get-rich-quick schemes, the miracle cures.
What's their take on that?
They're saying that real change takes effort and dedication. It's not instantaneous.
So anyone promising a shortcut is probably lying.
Pretty much they're preying on people's vulnerabilities, their desire for easy answers.
Okay, so no magic bullets.
Nope, hard work and personal growth. That's what they're advocating for.
Interesting. And then they make this distinction between despair and lacking faith or resilience.
Yeah, how are those different?
So faith in this context isn't necessarily about religion. It's more about believing that things can be right, having that inner strength.
Oh, I see, like an optimism or trust in the process.
Yeah. And resilience they define as actively engaging in overcoming challenges as opposed to just giving up.
So it's not just about positive thinking, it's about taking action.
Exactly. And finally, they talk about humanity's fragility and our tendency to look for external solutions.
Yeah, well, what's their point there?
They're saying that we focus too much on the physical world, the material things, and we neglect our inner consciousness.
So we're looking in the wrong place for happiness and fulfillment.
Right. And when things go wrong, we tend to look for someone or something to fix it for us.
instead of looking within.
Exactly. And they're saying that's where the real power lies in cultivating our inner strength, our resilience.
So it's about personal responsibility, taking control of our own lives.
Yeah. And they're saying that's where true happiness and inner peace come from, not from external things.
Wow, that's a powerful message.
It is. And it's a lot of process. It's a really different way of looking at the world, at ourselves, at the forces that might be influencing us.
Definitely thought-provoking.
Yeah. So you've given us a lot to think about here.
Hmm.
And it raises some interesting questions about how we perceive information, how we choose to focus our attention.
Absolutely.
So considering all this talk about hope and consciousness and the potential for change, what's one small step you could take today to maybe cultivate a little more inner resilience or to be a little more critical of the information you're taking in?
That's a good question.
Yeah, this is something to think about.
Definitely.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.
Bye.